All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our committee meeting today. We have a couple of guests with us that are normally not here, so introduce yourself. I'll tell you before we do that, let's give the invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to come together once again. We ask that you continue to watch over us, lead us, and guide us. We ask that this meeting be short, just like this prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. I figured I'd get that in early.
That depends on how groovy you are.
That was a curveball right there.
You won't ask me to pray again, will he?
Actually, that's a fastball.
That was a fastball. Yeah, man. That was it. Yeah. Wow.
All right, Councilman Roddy, thank you. Councilman Aldell, thank you for being in attendance tonight. We have staff members, and just go around the room right quick and introduce yourself, just very quickly.
Mike Moore, Assistant County Manager.
Catherine Jones, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Michael Kendry, County Attorney.
And Karen Brogdon, who's taking notes. And then Pete McVeigh is with us in the audience. So Pete, appreciate you being here, along with Christy Cox, our chair. And that's everybody in attendance. All right. So let's approve our old business from May the 18th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. New business. So sometime back, some of us attended a Farm Bureau meeting, and in that Farm Bureau meeting, there was some discussion of Farm Bureau Awards meeting. There was discussion about green space. So the green space conversation kind of evolved into a discussion about parks and green space. As we started looking into the potential of this initiative, it led us to Berkeley County, South Carolina, that actually passed a green space initiative that had a parks initiative attached to it. So our committee is going to talk today about hiring a consultant and giving the consultant some directives on what we want them to do as it relates to looking at the short and long range needs of parks here in York County, which could include obviously green space, because a future park you may not develop or build right now, but you have a plan to potentially build it one day, which would mean it's going to be green space for a while. And this whole master plan that we're embarking upon could evolve into something maybe even a little bit more than what we're thinking about once we decide what consultant we're going to work with. So we typed up a little agenda to shout on the board here. And so the first thing I want to talk about is the short range parks and green space master plan initiative. So as we talk through this, and I say we had a pre-meeting just with staff to make sure they were on board and what they were thinking, and so that's how we came up with this agenda for today. We can add anything else to it that you want to talk about, but the first thing is a short-range parks and green space master plan initiative, which would be looking at our current parks and maybe something that needs to come online sooner than a long-range plan. So part of our objective is going to be to ask the consultant that we decide to work with to take a look at all of our parks we have right now, determine what's the short and long range plan for that park, what is it going to take to build the parks out completely, what is it going to cost to build the parks out completely, and then obviously once we get that data and we get the long range parks green space master plan done, so we look at York County and we say, okay, we've got these parks wherever they exist currently. But as you look at growth, if you look at RFATS as an example, RFATS came out with a 2050 projection of where growth is going to take place in York County. So as you look at that as a guide, if you look at ParkServe, which is an app that tells you in an area where your parks are now and how close they are to your residents, and it tells you where you have holes where you need to consider placing other parks so that you're rounding out your area. So that your average citizen doesn't have to walk more than 10 minutes or so to a park.
Is that even achievable to say? Now, I'll go ahead. I'll make some comments later.
Yeah, I've got some questions too.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So the question would be on the long range parks and green space master plan initiative, what are our needs? What is it that we think we need as we think about parks, as we round out the parks in York County, and areas that aren't even developed yet, but one day they're going to need a park. Some areas probably need a park currently.
So
Okay.
are we gonna? Well, let me. Did you have a question first?
Well,
Go ahead, Paul.
As far as, jumping ahead, going straight to a consultant, I think one thing that will help would be, let's see a map of what we already have, where they're at. And then have some conversation on what is it that we want to achieve, because planning parks for out this long, I don't think is worth the time and effort. But if we plan in parks a 10-year, what's 10-year? I don't know what's the right number to project. But I don't know if it's achievable to say, hey, we want a park within a 10-minute walking distance from residents, because you got to remember, we're going to be in the counties. So you can walk a mile and you should be able to walk a mile in 14 minutes. I don't know if we're going to have that many freaking parks around to make that something that we can make a goal out of. But can we get some parks in some areas that obviously is in the rural area, in the county areas, because we're not building parks in these municipalities. I know we don't want to. They would love for us to do it and give them the money to, but let's kind of keep some things that we like to have a short term and a long term. Hey, this is where we may need to be in X number of years, but what can we achieve? I don't want to be playing in parks more than 10 years out, because that's something I think we can map out, plan, and get to. I may not be here. Hopefully I'm not here 10 years, but I like to see a good map throughout, even taking into account some of the city parks, because we know county residents use some of the city parks, and it'll be vice versa. So that's one thing I would definitely like to see. Where are our parks? Even in comparison to what municipalities also have, because they may have one in the city here, and you go down the road 5 minutes, now you're in the county. We don't want to put one that close. Let's be strategic on how we're looking, but are we sold on turning everything over to a consultant and come back and say, hey, this is what you got, this is what I suggest, this is what you need? Because I think we can get some of that from staff, because I don't know where all of our parks
So let's
are.
pause for a minute. Let me ask Catherine. So Catherine's actually been through this in Lancaster County. So do you mind sharing what your experience was in Lancaster County?
Sure. So my experience in Lancaster County was a little more, it was a strategic, but we had a specific purpose that we were kind of doing it for, and we were looking to try and build a bigger park and also address some of our deferred maintenance needs, because we had a lot of old parks, like dating back to the 1970s and 80s. But through kind of the process, we conducted a needs assessment and a gap analysis, which, to your point, Mr. Audiot, they identified areas that were not sufficient in recreation facilities and services, and they used demographics. They looked at our schools. We also incorporated focus groups, so it involved the community. There was a council focus group, there was a staff focus group, there was a corporate business focus group. So we took businesses and the consultant met with them for a couple hours, and they dove into the recreational needs, what we were lacking, what they felt like they should see more of. So, and then through that process, it was determined, they even identified areas in our county that we needed to add parks. And then they even identified specific amenities based on input from staff, council, and the general public of what amenities also needed to go into those parks. And so it was a very powerful experience, and it gave us a roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years. And to your point, you usually, once you establish a strategic plan, you revisit that every 10 years and you update that, because trends change, our area may change, the needs may change, all of those things. And just as I'm talking about it specifically to York County, and this being a brand new department, I would recommend us also looking at an operational philosophy type plan in conjunction with a strategic plan, because I think too what will help drive the strategic part of it on the capital side of building this, we need to understand what our mission, vision, and values are. What do we want to be? Who do we want to be? What kind of parks do we want to provide? I know the answer. I know what I think we should do, but I also want to make sure that that's the vision of council and county management. I think that needs to be identified first, and then, you know, kind of to your point, Mr. Huckabee, that's when all the data and the demographics and your needs assessment, your gap analysis, they look at trends. You know, they identify where your municipality parks are, what type of parks they are. You know, certain consultants has the ability to pull all of that data, and it's can give you a great roadmap forward.
So that's good, and that's very good. So looking at this thing from a needs perspective, okay. So I think, you know, in general, I'd like to see, and I think as Bump was saying here, is I'd like to see again an overview of where the parks are as opposed to in relationship to 5 and 10 year growth patterns. So where do we see new developments going in as opposed to where the parks are located? And I'd also like to see the overlay from the parks from the municipalities. For example, TGK's got a new park. You know, you've got all the parks in Rock Hill. So where do those lie in the big scheme of the large scheme of this thing? And then where do we see short-term and long-term growth? The next thing is I think there's a need for the vision, and I think you just touched upon it. Where do we want? What is our vision as a what we're going to offer from a parks perspective? Now, I say quality over quantity is more important, because somebody will drive a little further to go to a better quality park as opposed to popping in parks all over these different areas, but not have the quality of park that we're really looking for. You know, and you can see where the upgrades that we did to Ebenezer and some of these other parks were a major attractor, but it also makes it a destination, which is really good. And then from there, you can quantify businesses that may be related to that destination. So you have more, it becomes almost like an economic opportunity from an economic development perspective. So you can define it like that. The other thing I'd like to see is how do we connect it to a trail system, okay? So you look at a lot of these areas like like Pennsylvania, for example. They have a railbed where they opened it up to long-term bike paths that were intense, and then from there it established connections into the parks. Now you may be maybe 20 miles between the two, but you know what, bikers, that's nothing. That's nothing, but there's a trail system, I think, that is really important to associate back to the quality of the park. I think that from a needs perspective, we also have to identify how we're going to pay for this. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, and so through my process in Lancaster County, they identified methods, and they gave those as within their presentation and their proposal. They provided recommendations for council and management to consider as ways of funding, certain things. And one of the items is Lancaster County at the time did not have hospitality tax passed that we could use for tourism, related capital expenditures up to a certain percentage of operational cost. And so that was something, they passed shortly thereafter because we needed to start occurring some of those revenues. So that, the consultants typically, if that's something that we're asking for, they will provide, strategies and ways to fund. They can also prioritize items based on needs and demographics. So it could help us prioritize, back to a short-range plan, how do we continue to develop the spaces that we have now that aren't developed, and which ones come first. And then again, backing up to the operational side of things, it's great to build them, but when we build them,
you gotta maintain.
We gotta have staff.
Yeah,
right.
We gotta have staff
right.
to, if we're gonna collect fees upon entry, you gotta have staff there, you gotta have staff to maintain. If we're expected to run events, which we're in the business to host events, then we've gotta have, substantial staff to be able to oversee those. So,
well, I think quality, and again, to your point with events, I think the better quality parks you have, the better events that it drives, right? And so I think that, and even you mentioned about, a fair, right? A county fair.
Yeah,
you
that's,
know?
that was thrown to me about.
Yeah,
Not
and I
every
think
fair.
that a quality of park, and who knows where a quality of park may have an area where you can have a county fair. I'm just thinking out loud, but quality brings, I think, good events.
Now, one more comment before I turn it back over to you, Watts. One thing I definitely want to make sure we stay focused on. So many times we see, and I'll just pick on Rock Hill. Rock Hill does a lot to attract people here to utilize. I think our focus needs to be what can we put on the ground for our citizens here to utilize first and foremost, because it tears me up when we build these things and we're building it for someone else to come enjoy, but our residents use them very little or have access to them. But I think our county parks need to have a different focus. We're building this here for little Johnny, little Susie to come to this park and grow up in this park, and grandpa and grandma to come enjoy this park. Not so much banking on what can we do that's going to pull people to these parks. Programming, I think our municipalities do a lot with those. I don't want to compete with that. I think we need to focus on what can we do for a local quality of life enhancement to utilize. Because
100%.
I don't want to, if I want to walk a trail, I don't want to have to go all the way to Riverwalk or Cherry Park, because I live south, close to McConnell's. If there's something I can go do relatively close and utilize, it keeps me off the road from going in. We all talk about traffic.
Right.
So I think that was, and we can't throw out something that has this huge price tag, because we'll never get it. We'll never get it on track. We got to start, grow it. Find some areas that we definitely can make some impacts in. Because if we roll out something too big, you got to remember, we don't have a frivolous council on spending. And like you said, if we put it on the ground, we got to maintain it. And that's another cost. How do we raise these funds? That's the conversation to be had. So I think the conversation can scale it back a little bit and then let it take off, because there's a lot of unanswered questions. Because somebody on council may say, I don't really care about parks. Are we going to get that vote to make a big plan, a big splash about a park? So, but if we come in, can't come in too hot. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's keep our.
And if I may, that goes back to the strategic vision. What does council want to see? Is it quality of parks to be used by residents at no charge, or are we willing to accept entry fees into parks? I mean, these are, to your point of how we're going to finance both the capital and the operations.
Well, I mean, Ebony's is a prime example of, we have entry fee that goes in there, and the park's not big. You know what I mean? People will pay,
Right.
they pay. For quality, they pay. You know?
And you got to think, they're going to the lake.
They're going to swim.
That's
They're going to
a
swim, yeah.
big activity versus someone just going to, hey, I just want to take little Johnny to the park, ride the swings, walk the trails, maybe a biking trail or a hiking trail, something like that. I don't see us being able to staff it to where we're charging people to come do that.
Well, I think there's got to, right, but I mean, in a situation like that, you got to have, there's visions, right? And in the vision of this park, you may not charge, right?
Right, and I think that's okay. You have some.
That's
parks where you do
okay.
pay to come in.
Right, that's okay.
Mhm.
I mean, your amount of investment is lower, so you put it, of what you're offering, as opposed to something that offers more and you have to charge, so.
Like
so
Danny's
what-
Mountain, for example, right?
Right.
It's a park, people go up there, there's a cost to maintain it.
Right.
But we don't charge an entry.
Right.
fee. People can go up there and walk
Right.
anytime they want.
Right.
North Mountain's the same way right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Aside from if you're a hunter and you have to pay your hunting license fee, that's all that you pay.
Mm-hmm. So York County is mostly into passive recreation, and our municipalities are into active recreation.
Yeah.
And
With the
what's your
notable exception of Field Day Park, which is
Right.
a special tax.
Mhm.
Special tax, yeah, exactly. So pretty much everything you all said is what we would like staff to go have these conversations with a consultant and begin to build out. Well, they need to build out the RFP, not we. They need to build out the RFP, so then they can go to a consultant that's in this space. This is what they do.
Right.
And they will help us put together a plan for the existing parks, and what is it gonna take to build them out? What is it gonna cost to build them out? What should we build out? what would the expectation be after the build out? And then take a look at York County as a whole and do what you said, look where we need to look at placing parks in the future. Evaluate the economic impact of these parks, like Ebenezer Park operates in the black now, it was in the red 3 years ago, operates in black. Allison Creek will probably operate, I'm guessing, in the black at some point.
At least from an operating
Yeah,
perspective.
Catawba Bend's got the
Okay.
potential to operate in the black. Worth Mountain one day probably has the potential to operate in the black.
Considering what we spend on Catawba Bend, it's been a long time before we clearly in the black, but
Yeah.
we can have annual in the black.
Operationally,
Yeah.
that capital.
So then, municipalities, Tom, you brought up municipalities, that's number 4. So part of what we'd be asking the consultant to do is to get with the municipalities and understand where they are now and what they're looking at in the future.
Mhm.
Because it's not our role to duplicate in the
Right.
municipalities. And when I said 10 minutes, ParkServe is an app for municipalities. And like at Rock Hill, the greater part of Rock Hill has a park within 10 minutes of where everybody lives,
Mhm.
believe it or not. But we don't have that, we don't
We too-
need
we too-
10
we too-
minutes.
yeah,
in
we
the
too
county.
spread out.
Mhm.
Right, ours
We too
is more
spread.
spread out, exactly.
Mhm.
And it's a different type of park than what you got in the municipalities. So that kind of covers number 4. Number 5, case studies. So when you think about parks that you've been to, whether it's local or anywhere else, that are realistic comparisons to what we might want to accomplish here, do any parks come to mind that you would want staff to ask the consultant to take a look at? Gather information. If they have a
Well-
phased project like similar to where Catawba Bend is an example, how was the project phased? When did they hit profitability and what phase? And
So let me ask you though, I mean, I'm not, I think having a consultant is good, but I think that there's a lot of knowledge right here, you know? I'd like to first see an analysis from yourself and from yourself of what you envision and what you see and what you've heard and what your experience and what you would recommend. And then I'd like to then kind of talk about it from then, and then we can decide. To me, I'm just thinking out loud here, the value of a consultant to come in. I get it, and I don't know what we're talking about for cost-wise, but I'm sometimes I think, to me, I think the first thing is to tap into the knowledge that we currently have here with you guys on the staff and come back with what you see as our vision and recommendation. And then from there, we could determine whether to go to the next step of having a consultant come in. Again, I don't want to go past it, because sometimes if you do that, I think sometimes you lose the vision of the local of the local team by going directly and you saying, well, that's my vision. Well, not really. I mean, this is my vision. If we go to a consultant, maybe it matches up or not. So again, I'm speaking out loud now, in regards to as I'm thinking about it, but I would like to see more of it unfold that way instead of just rushing to a consultant.
Okay.
so what they'll do is, what I was proposing to you all is, they would actually go out and talk to consultants. They would build the ask. They would build the ask. So they're doing what you just said you'd like for them to do. They'll build the ask for the county and what we're looking for. Then they're gonna go out, and they already have in mind that Clemson's got a consultant. Lancaster paid them how much?
Well, we paid them $12,000, I believe, 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
then we did not do an operational, plan, so you're probably looking at, more than that.
Yep.
Um,
This is probably gonna be $35,000 or less, probably is what this is gonna cost.
I'm gonna charge you more than that if I was doing it, so I know it's not gonna be that cheap. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we'll know once.
And my thought was, let's say, obviously staff gets to massage it and can come back and say, this is kind of what this is our thinking right now.
Mhm.
Here's some areas, here's some of the thought process. Pitch it back to this committee or to the council and say, hey, but if we want to go further to look more into it, now at this step, we work with a consultant to
Right.
kind of do it that way. But I like to hear what staff would.
Yeah, well, see,
kinda-
I think that's what I hear what you're saying, Watts,
That's a
and
good
I
approach.
get it, but I would like to have them come back with what they see as their vision and what they would recommend.
Okay.
And
let's
then
do
from
that.
there, we can determine the level of where we want to go with a consultant. Because I think it's important that I think we need to know what you guys think was the vision, because, again, it's important to bake it out up front in a way that we at least know where you guys stand.
Because I wouldn't envision a park in York would look the same way a park over in Rock Hill would look, even in the county area. Unless we just gonna get this model that, hey, here's the simplest park that we can just mass produce, and we got 15, we can do 15 of them, but they all gonna have this picnic shelter, these 2 grills, this shed, and this size parking lot. That's not what we want to come back. I was looking at some of the demographics, some of the areas. Hey, this would be a nice 4-acre park, 5-acre park. It can include 1 through 7. Over here, here's another. If we see a vision for similar size, but we would put this over in this area, because pickleball in south side of Rock Hill is not gonna fly off. The line won't be that long over on this side. But pickleballs work well over in the Clover Lake Wiley area. So just looking at some of those, and like I say, that's going to take in some of the demographics, some of the growth. That's kind of what I want to hear, the thought, some of the vision. And if we over in the rural, over in Fort Mill, hey, what would work outside of municipality in Fort Mill?
Right.
Right, well,
I agree.
I'll be
I
honest,
think that's the right approach.
we are at that point where we need to hire a consultant to do a strategic and master plan. I'll be honest, if I go to hire a high-level, employee like a park superintendent, one of their questions they're asking me is, does your department have a master strategic plan? And we don't. And with us at the start and forefront of starting a department and looking to acquire more properties and, build out the properties that we have, we need that foundation. And a consultant can provide the data and look at the demographics beyond what myself and Mike have the capability of doing, and meet with us together to understand what the vision is. And I think we're all on the same page here that we don't want to duplicate services, we don't want to duplicate parks, we don't want to get in the business of running athletics like all the municipalities. We want to complement the recreational opportunities that exist here in York County and see where there's deficiencies, and add, parks in those areas and with those amenities based on what we feel the public needs. And they're gonna get all that through that process, through that strategic plan, needs assessment, and gap analysis process. Not necessarily myself or Mike.
So let me ask a quick question, just a quick question. So how do y'all feel about the staff coming back to us with a vision plan on the direction we need to go, or they feel like the county needs to go? That's what I heard you saying.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I just don't want to
And then-
lose your vision,
and
okay?
then-
Because look, the consultants are from other, they could be, they don't live here. They don't, you all know what the environment is, and you know what your vision is. So I don't want to miss it.
See, that's why they're building the RFP, we're not. They're building the
Right.
RFP.
But coming back to us with the vision, I think at least
Okay.
foundational,
Makes
I think
sense.
it's really important.
Now, should we start thinking on a preliminary basis, because if we're going to build these parks, we got to start thinking about getting some land somewhere. Does it work better to say, hey, we have 5 acres over here, we have 4 acres over here, we have 6 acres over here? Because at some point we want to get this in our inventory to say we can do this with this piece of property.
That's kind of the whole
Because
point of it.
if we don't have it and we got a vision for it, it's like, well, that's like having
That's
a
the
bucket of
whole
paint
point
with
of
nothing to paint.
Well,
And we will do like a data dump of everything that the county has already done and paid for.
Mhm.
And then they have the scientific methods and measures and softwares to run and track all these datas, the trends. The true consultants that do this, they have all that at their fingertips, in addition to whatever data or master plans or things that we've already done and paid for. To again identify how many acres. Literally, they identified up to how many acres we needed, and they gave us a general area of where we needed to put this 100-acre park in Lancaster County. And so that gave a roadmap to, county management and myself and the director on trying to look for property within a certain mile radius. And, again, in this process, it's high level, right? I mean, it's not like Catawba Bend's master plan or Worth Mountain where you're literally trying to go through every little amenity. It's not, deep in the weeds just yet, but they will identify, okay, in this area, we're deficient in X, Y, and Z, or we need more trails. There's not, the closest trail is 30 miles from this area. We need to have trails here, so that would be a higher priority for a park in X area. They kind of, again, identified a lot of that through this strategic planning process. And they use the public input, they use focus groups, scientific data, demographics. They use all of that to help provide that information and put it in a presentation and a report that we can use for the next 10 years. And then in 10 years, it's recommended that you go and you update that again as things change. And it keeps future councils kind of on track with, what we want to do. And we go at the pace we can afford to go, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the trails component is really important. That's really important, because I think if I was to say what is our lack right now, it's a lack of trails. I mean, and I know that, like, we do work with the Thread Trail group, and that's good. But I think that having that vision of future trails, in the rails to trails system component, what we're talking about in RFATs and stuff, all that stuff. If I was thinking of a gap right now, I think that to me is a gap.
So, for example, one of the focus groups, if that's a priority, one of the focus groups could be on just trails in general. And so you would put people like the Bike Ped Coalition, somebody from there in the focus group. You would put somebody from Carolina Thread Trail in that focus group. We can dictate and choose who we recommend to be in a specific focus group. And then they collect that information and they talk to those people and they ask the right questions to better understand our county and what the needs are. And, anyway, I mean, so, so if that's a focus group, a trails focus group, and it can, 10 to 12, 15 people, I feel like. I mean, we even had a focus group of high school students, and that was probably the most powerful focus group that I witnessed. Just to hear from them what we were lacking in Lancaster County, and whether they wanted to come back and live in Lancaster County, which a lot of them said they did not. And a lot of it was because there was nothing for them to do. There weren't enough recreational opportunities. So, but we can determine what focus groups we want and what areas.
Oh, since you left Lancaster, glad to have you. Thank you. How much was executed out of what was say, hey, this is kind of what we see for the future Lancaster County. So from that start to now, what's on the ground?
Great question. So we did not do they did a needs assessment for the entire county, but the purpose of us hiring the consultant was very specific to building a regional park and identifying where that regional park needed to go. So we weren't really conducting a full-blown strategic and master plan.
Just basically for one park.
It was really just kind of for one park.
Okay. Did you do it?
So the county we've acquired property before I left. We entered a development agreement to obtain the 100 acres. It was within the area that the consultant identified where we needed to have it, so it all worked out. And then also what came from this consultant, Lancaster County passed the hospitality tax, which was great. We were able to use some of those funds to handle some deferred maintenance at some of our facilities that draw some tourism. And then it also led to a successful recreation bond that passed, that really was completely kind of separate, but I think all the data and all the hype and of us trying to get this 100-acre park, regional park developed, that it identified all the deficiencies in the county and the needs that were there, that 100-acre park still wasn't gonna suffice. And so our council recommended putting to the voters a rec bond, and there were 4 projects and a greenway project, which was nonprofit, that was on that bond. It was a $19 million bond, and it passed. And it gave us 4 facilities, 2 in Indian Land, 1 in Beaufort, and 1 in East Springs, the southern part of the county. So we were strategic in making sure that we identified a project and some deficiencies in, different areas of the county, so that, most people would not have to travel more than 15-20 minutes to get to a park, one of those new parks, or at least we were given one to each high school. Is kind of how we looked at it. And I'll be honest, the bond barely passed, surprisingly, but I guarantee you if they were to go pass another one after they've seen the result of those quality facilities, I feel sure that they would pass one again. And really what led, I think, council to move forward with that is out of the data and whatnot that the consultant did, they did they did the focus groups, where they did one huge public input session. And we did it at one of our rec centers. We did it in the evening so that families could come, and they had a clicker system. So we had projectors up everywhere in our gym, and everybody was given a clicker. And they ran through all these series of questions. And I remember, something that was very eye-opening is, they asked a question: what would you pay to have access to these quality parks? What would you pay a year for you and your family to go? And it was amazing to see the dollar amount that people were willing to pay, which when the bond went out, it was just dollars, really. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, in comparison to what they actually said they would pay to have quality facilities. So I think that also gave council and the management team there a better understanding of really what the public wanted, and that they were willing to pay for it. So that was also what kind of, I think, really helped them move forward with the rec bond, even though that was not necessarily in conjunction with this regional park. It was really separate, but because of the needs and gap analysis that was done, it identified some of these areas that we were not sufficient in, and then our programs had outgrown the current facilities, and those things. So
That's great feedback, Catherine. So are y'all in agreement that we'll ask
Yep.
Mike and his staff to
Yep.
come back and put a
Yeah.
master plan together?
Master
a
plan,
vision?
vision,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
So they'll put a vision
Sounds
and the
good.
ask together for the RFP. Now, how much time do y'all need before we need to get back together? What do you think? How long do you think this will take you guys to complete?
well, I
that
guess
process?
if we've got are we waiting to meet back after the RFP goes out, or before?
No,
the
to get the
RFP?
RFP together before.
They want to hear
I think what we're being
Yeah.
asked is to develop kind of a vision.
A scope?
Yeah.
And
Kind of
scope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what y'all are.
Yeah,
asking.
scope and vision of
Yeah.
what you.
A
what you-
vision
yeah.
statement of what kind of
Yeah.
we.
Some of the
like to
questions that
see
need to be
from
answered.
the, consultant, kind of what we envision
Mhm.
for the
For the
county
park,
parks.
right, what you envision, what is the vision statement? What are?
Yeah,
what-
and
what
I
do
mean,
you
we can certainly
would
come
like to
back
see?
with a map of our parks, and I think y'all had mentioned you wanted to at least see what we've got. We can show you kind
Mhm.
of what we've got.
And I'd like to see also too, if you can, is, we have access to where future growth is. We know where the new developments are coming, right? So maybe like an overlay of where we see new growth.
We'll.
Probably what's been
we can try to
approved.
pull that.
We can see what's been approved.
You got, right, I mean, because you can pull what's been purchased for future growth,
Mhm.
and you can see where growth is gonna happen. Whether it's York, Clover, whatever.
Tom, I'd suggest that
Right.
piece, you wait for the consultant, because they're gonna be able to tell you that specifically.
Well, I mean,
Because
it's not, I can pull that. I
Just
mean,
picture this.
that's not a hard thing to pull. I'm just saying if they're gonna pull a map of the county, if they can overlay that, that's great. If
So,
they can't, that's fine.
If
I'm
we
just
can
asking.
agree, what I think I heard us asking earlier, you all said, and we're redirecting, and that is to ask them to put together what we're asking the consultant
Yeah, I
to
think
do
y'all
for
want to
us.
see from us kind of what we
Yes.
would recommend.
Yes,
Yeah.
not
The
the
consultant.
work
Yeah.
they're gonna do for us, but they put together what
Just
we're
kind of a
asking
high
the
level.
consultant to accomplish for us.
Mhm.
And
But-
in talking with Catherine, I think we can get back to y'all first week of December. I think it's,
Yeah,
is a good timeline for us.
right.
I
But-
don't know, my
but-
schedule's kind of busy.
Yeah.
Or,
I don't know, my schedule's kind of busy the first week of
Yeah,
December.
there you go, man.
is it?
Yeah.
So she-
We'll work
So,
around you, Bob.
so just,
Yeah, so
Just
Ron
sooner
should
the
check with
better.
him first.
Is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. That's great.
But just hearing you say like over in Lancaster, y'all looking for like 100-acre park, just thinking what, you're not gonna find too many 100-acre tracts. We would need 100 acre for every park, nowhere
Right.
near it.
Yeah.
But what's kind of, yeah, you can do a decent park to do some decent amenities in what size park? How many acres are we talking for some of the simplest things that we would offer for leisure, for community, not something big that we can say, hey, this can be an economic development driver or economic engine. I don't want to go down that road. Because now we're getting into things that probably municipalities and other are going to be trying, we don't want to compete with that, but what's a decent sized park if you're looking at parking, some amenities, and even with trails? You know, you don't want to just do a quarter-acre walking
There
track.
are a
I
lot of
learned early on
factors.
in some of this design of parks is you always wanna look for property in increments of 25 acres.
Okay.
Minimum, and we learned from experience, we were given 10 acres of property on one of these bond projects, and, it was free,
Couldn't
which
do
was
nothing with
great,
it.
but we lost probably 30–40% of the property, we had to reduce the size of the fields, which,
Right.
you know, affects services, so.
But on the other hand, you know, if you're connected with trails, that may offset some of the parking if you can.
Right,
Yeah,
because that could be a
connectivity.
parking destination.
It could be. So
Right.
one of the things, you know, in
Right.
the vision is we want to connect, you know,
Right.
via trails, some of these parks.
Right, but that, again, that's why if you can't get it, that's fine, but that, if you could do, I know you're gonna get parks, but if you can get an overlay of what you see for future growth, residential, because that makes a big difference. When you start talking, it's just like placing schools, right, or looking at where you're gonna build the next school.
Well, it's
Well, you
funny.
first gotta know where the growth is.
Right. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny, the consultants looked at all that, and even some of the data and
Mhm.
information on the population and the growth trends that the consultant used, it actually helped the school district. They were able to use that data because it was public.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually helped them.
Yeah.
In some of their planning efforts to plan for schools, so.
Yeah, that's what we used to do in the Fort Mill, we'd look at the overlays. Makes a big difference.
All right, tentatively, what about December the 4th? We have a council meeting Monday night. Maybe we meet at 4:30. Bump, I know you don't know your schedule
December
yet.
4th. Oh, I know that.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
What's your
I
day,
can't
4:30?
meet at 4:30 because I'm on day shift that day.
Okay. So what about, maybe
That
Tuesday?
week I can meet at 6. I can get out by,
All right.
get here by 6.
You wanna say Tuesday,
The 5th,
Tuesday the 5th?
looks good for me.
Yeah.
Now, if we-
It's good for me too.
Y'all wanna do it at 6, 5:30, 5,
I can't do
4:30?
5:30. 6 is
5:30
probably
here.
the earliest.
The
I can get.
5th?
Now, if it was the following week, which I'll be off, but we can shoot for the week of the 4th.
6
I just
o'clock?
can't, I can
6
push to
o'clock's
get you
good.
at 6.
So
yeah.
we,
1 hour meeting, 6 to 7.
why don't we do
Yeah.
5:30 to 6:30?
On the 5th.
I can't get here
6.
5:30.
Oh, 6 o'clock
6 to
6
7.
would be the earliest, absolute earliest.
on the 5th? Okay,
Tuesday the 5th. Karen will send us an invite.
sounds good. The other thing I was gonna mention while we're talking about this, if we're looking at what's out there and what's not out there, one of the big things I've had 3 people come to me lately, and they're looking to see where we can support a skateboard park. I've had 3 people in the last probably 4 weeks come ask me about it.
I bet it's a
And-
huge liability with a skate park.
Well, I'm just saying that's been the ask. In Rock Hill, I guess had one, and they had removed it or tore it down because they're putting a development in or something, or like new buildings. But anyways, I'm just sharing that with you.
We had one in Lancaster and we removed it.
Did you?
We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Now, that was, I think there was
Probably
some
liability.
liability
Yes.
issues
Yeah,
with that. and
exactly.
the Risk
Mhm.
management just did not want to
Right.
entertain it.
Right.
But there are other Parks and Recreation departments across the state
That have
I'm
them.
sure have them.
Yeah. So, anyways, again, it's been an ask lately.
I like
Yeah.
speed bumps in my district.
Man, you gotta
I
just,
get-
dude, it's because you gotta slow down.
I
man.
get more
You
speed
know?
bump requests than anything.
I get a lot.
People
Well,
speeding
the-
through.
Yeah.
The
Tell your
good
neighbors
news,
to slow
again,
down.
is through this consultant, I mean, they will identify amenities.
Mhm.
Like they will, I mean, there will be an opportunity for the public to identify amenities that the county does not offer.
Yeah.
You know, that municipalities don't have, and that's when we can start looking at some of
Okay.
that data and understand, is it really, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is there really a big push or need for skate park?
Right,
Or,
sure.
or is it trails, or is it mountain biking, or,
Right.
you know, what is it?
Right.
So, yeah, cause I mean, that's what led us to, again, so specific with the amenities that needed to go in that 100-acre park,
Right.
was because of some deficiencies. There was a huge, outcry for a splash park.
Yeah.
So that's an element that's going into the 100-acre regional park.
Yeah.
A splash pad. So.
Yeah, well.
Listen to the public and, you
Right.
know, we didn't have one in Lancaster County.
Yeah.
So, but, or
Well,
they, I guess.
I was, yeah, if we don't get the skateboard park, which I think, I mean, I would be cool to have one, but I get the liability, but you know, but they are popular with the kids, I mean, they love that. So that, we could do like a, you know, like, you know, when they train through the Olympics, you know, they do the roller thing and then they land in the swimming pool, something like that, yeah.
Tom's determined to push this to 7 o'clock. It's not gonna happen.
No,
Not to have.
everybody, thanks for holding it.
Appreciate it.
I'm the one who calls him. I call him. I said, I need to be out of here at 7. I need to
Kevin
shut
Madden owes
up.
me a dinner. I told him this wouldn't be more than an hour.
There.
So he owes me a dinner.
Oh, you bet him?
But I just,
I'm
yeah,
done.
no, he bet me. I didn't initiate it. Appreciate the input.
Yes.
Very valuable to us getting to where we ended up tonight. Look forward to hearing back from you guys on the 5th, Tuesday the
Look
5th,
forward to it.
6 o'clock. And then hopefully next steps, hire a consultant to do the work
Yes.
for us. So there's no need for executive session tonight. Is there a motion to?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All right.
Good
No
job, Tom.
discussion?
Yeah, it really-
All those in
yeah, you
favor?
too.
We out.
Aye.
Good job on that motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I
You did
really-
really well.
Yeah, good
Thanks,
meeting you
y'all.
all.
I gotta
All
run,
right.
everybody. Good to see
Y'all have a
y'all.
good evening.
Thank